My teacher announced, "We installed a secret spy camera into one of your laptops to watch you take your test. If you don't come clean, we will expel all of you." I looked around the room and everyone else seemed just as confused as me. Anna's mouth was hanging open. Kevin kept looking at his laptop like it might explode. Nobody was making eye contact with anyone else. Francis, the class bully, suddenly stood up from his seat in the back row. "Wait, but what if we vote who the cheater is?" Mrs. Jacobs tilted her head like she was thinking about it. "I'll allow it. You have 2 minutes to decide as a class, but if you're wrong, you'll all face consequences." The room erupted into whispers, and everyone started moving around talking to each other. I had no idea who could have cheated. I'd been so focused on my own test I hadn't looked at anyone else. I walked over to Anna first, since she sat right next to me during the test. She immediately grabbed my arm. "I know exactly who it is," she whispered, looking straight at Francis. "It's obviously him. He never studies and somehow got a B+ on the midterm. He definitely cheated." That made sense, but I wanted to hear what other people thought. I moved over to Kevin, who was still staring at his laptop. "This is all fake," he said when I asked him. "Mrs. Jacobs is lying. There's no way they can install cameras in our personal laptops without us knowing. She's just trying to scare someone into confessing." Kevin was smart about tech stuff, so maybe he was right, but Mrs. Jacobs looked dead serious standing at the front of the room watching us all scramble around. In the corner, I noticed Gerald sitting alone at his desk. He was crying silently with his head down, and nobody was talking to him. Gerald was usually super quiet, but he always got good grades. I walked over and sat in the empty desk next to him. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. He looked up at me with red eyes and tears streaming down his face. "It was me," he whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "What?" "I cheated. I'm the one she's talking about." He grabbed my sleeve desperately. "Please don't tell them, please. I only did it because I couldn't study last night. My mom had a seizure and we were at the hospital until 4 in the morning. I didn't have time to study and I couldn't fail this test or I'd lose my scholarship." I stared at him not knowing what to say. Gerald was a good kid who worked harder than anyone. His mom had epilepsy and he took care of her by himself since his dad left years ago. "1 minute left," Mrs. Jacobs called out. The class was getting louder with everyone arguing about who the cheater was. Most people were pointing at Francis, who was defending himself aggressively. A few people thought it might be Fanny because she'd been on her phone a lot lately. Nobody was looking at Gerald. "Please," Gerald begged again. "I've never cheated before in my life. I just couldn't lose my scholarship. We need that money for my mom's medication." 30 seconds! I stood up and walked to the center of the room. Everyone was waiting for me to say something since I'd talked to the most people. Francis was glaring at me like he was daring me to say his name. Anna was nodding toward Francis, trying to get me to pick him. Gerald was staring at his desk with his shoulders shaking. "Time's up," Mrs. Jacobs said. "Who is the cheater?" The room went completely silent. Everyone was looking at me since I was standing in the middle. I could feel Gerald's desperate eyes on my back. I thought about his mom in the hospital and his scholarship, and how one moment of weakness might ruin his whole future. I stayed silent and shook my head. Other people started naming Francis, but there was no consensus. Some said Fanny. A couple people said they didn't know. Nobody said Gerald. Mrs. Jacobs waited until everyone stopped talking. Then she smiled, which was weird because she never smiled during serious moments. "Gerald, please stand up," she said gently. Gerald slowly stood up with his head down. Everyone turned to stare at him in shock. "Gerald was the one who looked up answers on his phone during the test," Mrs. Jacobs announced. "But he was only allowed to tell one person. He chose to tell someone he trusted." The whole class was confused now. I definitely was. "This wasn't about catching a cheater," Mrs. Jacobs continued. "Gerald didn't actually cheat. This was a test about integrity and standing together as a class. You could have thrown anyone under the bus to save yourselves, but you didn't. You passed the real test. In order to succeed in school and life, you must work as a team or fail individually." Everyone started talking at once. Gerald looked relieved and confused at the same time. Anna was asking how this was even legal. Kevin was saying he knew it was fake all along. Then Francis started laughing from the back of the room. "Nah, that's crazy because I dead-ass cheated."